Hi everyone, today's video is something a little bit different. I'm going to be doing a collaboration video. The collaboration is between Ann Melvin and I. Now if you don't know Ann, she is also a designer for Sizzix. She does the same thing as me, the TV shows. But Ann and I have got very different styles, so we thought it would be quite fun to pick the same couple of die sets and then both make a couple of projects with them. So the die sets we both agreed on are the Winter Garland set. This is this fabulous wreath set designed by Pete Hughes, and then we thought we'd have an alphabet with it, so we've gone with the Tim Holtz alphanumeric alphabet. So we've both made a couple of things. I'll put a link to Ann's page here so you can pop across and see what she's made. I decided to go for a card and a wall plaque. My card is quite simple and I went for sort of bright colours, and then for my wall plaque I decided to go for quite a subdued colour scheme. So I wanted to get two different looks from these same dies. I'll switch my camera around now and we'll get into the how I made these, but don't forget to pop over and see Ann's video too. So here's a reminder of the two die sets. We've got the Alphanumeric by Tim Holtz and the Winter Garland by Pete Hughes. And I've got an MDF round here which I've already given a coat of white gesso, and then I've given it a coat of this pink. It's called Honeysuckle by Creative Expressions. It's just an acrylic paint, so you know, any acrylic paint would do. And I'm just working out what I need, and I'm going to die cut all the elements from watercolour card so that I can then colour them how I want to. So to start with, I'm just going to die cut kind of everything really. I'm going to do the larger wreath, all of the florals and a couple of the leaves. And then I'm probably die cutting more than I need because I'm going to do a couple of sets here, but it's better to have more to play with than having to need to go back and die cut more as I start to sort of piece it all together. So at this point I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to assemble these, so it's easier to die cut lots. And I've decided to colour these. I'm going to use my distress inks. I've got the mini cubes here and I use these a lot for watercolouring. These smaller cubes are great for just smishing onto the glass mat and painting as a watercolour. So I'm going to grab some of the leaves here. I think these leaves look a bit like eucalyptus leaves, and I'm going for a green for these. And there's two different leaves actually. The ones that we just looked at look like eucalyptus, and these ones are a bit more pointed. So I'm going to go for a green on this particular style of leaf. And you can see I'm not being too careful here, I'm just roughly watercolouring. And then I want more of a bluey green for those other round leaves because I think they look like eucalyptus, so I'm going for a kind of grey, green and blue sort of tones for these. So I'm mixing two colours here, just to give me that kind of look. I didn't want these all to be the same colour, so it really does help if you pick a few different shades to play with. So I'm just working my way through, colouring all of these. As I say, I probably have more here than I'm going to need, but it's far easier to have too many than not enough. Because once you've, while you've got all the ink on the mat, it takes 2 seconds to colour one, whereas if I wipe all this down, clear it up and then decide I want another sprig of leaves, it's a pain to get it all out again. So it's better to do too many, and then you can always pop them in a pot to use later anyway. They won't go to waste. So now I'm moving on to those little sort of sprigs that look like they've got berries on, and I wanted a different shade for these, so I'm using Speckled Egg for these. So again, I'm just going to apply a wash of colour over these. Now I think I've die cut about 4 or 5 here. I'm probably only going to need a couple, but again, while I'm at it, it's easier to do a load rather than have to do any afterwards. So now I'm onto the wreath and I'm going to go for a brown. I've grabbed a couple of browns here, but I kind of prefer the darker brown. The one on the left is a bit too reddish for me, so but I'm going to use both just so that I've got a bit of variation on here. It's not all just one flat colour. And also, while I've smushed that on my mat, I might as well use it all up. So I'll just give that a good coat all over. And now the last element to colour are the flowers. And I'm going to use Victorian Velvet for these. I really like this for the sort of look I'm going for. This is a really sort of muted tone. It's in between a pink and a lilac really, and it's one of my favourites. This and Tattered Rose I do really like. Now you can see I've still got a bit of brown on my brush there, which has made it even more of a muddy colour, but I'm going with it because that's going to give a nice variation anyway. I don't want these petals to all look the same, so by the time I add a bit more, it'll provide a nice variation. The other thing with these that I'm going to do, which I haven't bothered to with any of the others, is I'm going to do one layer and then I will go back in and just drop a bit more colour in places, because these are sort of going to be the focal point really, and I don't want them all just to be flat colour. So I will go back in, you know, just by the nature of what I'm doing, some of these will be lighter than others where I've just got more water on the brush. So you will get a variation anyway, but I'm going to accentuate that by, I'll give them a quick blast with my heat tool to dry them, and then I'll maybe just drop a little bit more back on. I quite like the sort of harsh lines you get when you do dry with a heat tool and then go back in. You really do get that watercolour look doing that, so I shall do that to all of these. So now everything's coloured and I've let it dry, and I can work out now how I'm going to place these on here. I didn't really have an idea before I started how I was going to do this. So to start with, I'm going to pop the wreath on because obviously everything's going to fit on this. So then it's a case of playing around with the elements and deciding how I want them to go. I'm just sticking this down with PVA glue, and then I'm just kind of working out. I should probably have a cluster of flowers. I'm not sure if I'm going to have the berries going all the way around the wreath. I'm thinking it might be nice to still see a fair bit of that brown wreath underneath, so I don't want to cover it too much. And I'm really liking the variation in colours I've got here, because each element is coloured differently, but because I've gone for kind of muted tones, it's not too fussy. So I'm kind of thinking that's the rough idea. But then, yeah, I'm thinking I do still want to see some of the some of that brown wreath. So I'm going to shape the petals with my paper sculpting kit, and I think I'll start off with the flowers because I've kind of decided they're going to go in that bottom left corner. And once I've got those there, then I can just slot in what I want to. But I'm thinking I'll just have a little sprig coming out either side of the flowers, and then some of the brown still showing from the wreath underneath. I'm not going to cover it completely. So you can see all I'm doing is giving each flower petal just a quick rub over with my ball tool on this mat, and that's just giving them a bit of dimension, and then I can layer up the different petal elements. So I'm going to attach the flowers with a tiny foam pad, and the reason I'm doing this is that I can sort of overlap them a bit, and also I'll be able to just tuck the leaves and berries underneath the flower petals without worrying about them being stuck down, so it gives me that flexibility. And then from here on I'm just going to be brave and start chucking stuff on. In my head I've kind of got an idea where I'm going to place everything, but to be quite honest, until I stick them down I'm not 100% on that. The leaves in this set are great because the eucalyptus ones sort of curl one way and the other leaves curl the other, so it does make it easier to sort of follow the curve of the wreath shape. I'm still quite undecided about the berries. I don't want to cover all of the wreath, so you can see here I'm still trying to make up my mind how to lay these out. Now once I've got the first sort of few down, you can see there I've just torn that one. Once I've got one layer down, I don't want it all to be too uniform, so it's a good idea to just cut or tear some of them so that you get shorter pieces that you can tuck in, and it kind of makes it nice and full without it all looking the same. Because if you think about it, I have only got two different types of leaves here. I've got the green ones and then the bluey green, so they would all look the same if I just plonked them straight down. So you can see there I've just torn a piece off that one too. I still can't quite decide about this. I want a bit more berries, but I still want some of the brown, so I'm going to do the same thing and just extend that a little bit by tearing one, and I can tuck it underneath the other one so you won't see where I've ripped it. And that's just going to give me, I just wanted a few more berries, but if I'd had added a whole one it would completely cover the wreath, so yeah, I'm quite happy with that now. And I've grabbed some lovely gold Opulent cardstock, and I've been thinking what to put on here, and I've decided that I might want to hang this up in my studio, and I've got quite a few things now that say create, so I've decided to cut out the words to put create on here. And at this point I'm not sure if I'm going to put the words in the centre of that wreath or sort of curved underneath. I'll cut them out and place them and see which looks best really. So I'm just lining them up in the centre, and I think this is going to be the best look actually. I quite like that. They fit nicely in the centre, so I'm just going to stick those down like that. So those are all stuck down now, and I've grabbed some Nuvo dots in white, and I'm just adding this. Sorry, my hand's a little bit in the way of seeing what I'm doing, but I'm just going to add the berries in with this. I really like using Nuvo drops with these sort of dies that have got berries on, because it just gives it dimension. There are dies in the set that you can cut berries from, but I always prefer the dimension of Nuvo drops than just a flat cardstock. You could cut them from cardstock and then you even use just glossy accents or clear drops on top, but I just love this white, and I didn't want to introduce another colour, so I've gone with white because, you know, we've already got a few colours going on here and it's quite a subtle colour scheme, so I thought the white looked really good. So I've let those dry, and now I am going to just put some embossing powder around the edges. I quite often do this when I use these MDF rounds, because even when you paint the edges they do look a bit messy, I think, and because I've got just that pop of gold in the centre, I thought it would be quite nice to have a little bit of metallic around the edge. So all I'm doing is, you can see there I've got my Versamark ink pad, I'm just running that around the edge to get some of that clear ink on, and then I'm dipping it into this big pot of metallic embossing powder. The powder I'm using is called rose gold actually, and it goes really nicely with the colour scheme that I've gone for. So I'm going to work my way round and cover all the edges with this. So that's the edges all nice and metallic, and I think it looks really, really smart. And next up I want to do a card as well using the same set. So I've got a craft card blank, and I'm just going all around the edges with a white gel pen just to give a sort of faux stitching look. This is something I quite like to do. I really like the look of white on craft, and this is going to give just a little bit of interest around the edges. So now I'm going to grab that same large wreath die that we used on the last project, and this time I'm just using cardstock to cut it from, and this green is from the festive Sizzix cardstock set. It's a lovely bright green. This is one of my favourite colours actually, and I'm going for a completely different look for this card than we did on the last project. The last project was kind of vintage looking, quite subtle. This one I'm going for a more modern look with a real pop of colour. So I'm just going to stick that straight down with a bit of PVA glue. Just a few dots all around. And then I'll pop it quite centrally, like so. And then I can die cut some flowers. And I think I'm going to probably go for a similar arrangement as last time, but the flowers will be probably on the other side and probably a slightly different arrangement. I'm going to use this bright pink. This is also from the festive Sizzix cardstock set, and I love the combination of this sort of olive green and this lovely bright magenta pink. And I'm umming and ahhing about the alphabet, and I'm thinking that actually I'm going to stamp something on this one. So I'm popping that alphabet out the way, and I'm just going to quickly off camera die cut the flowers. So I've got all my flowers ready, and I'm going to do the same thing again and give them a quick whiz with my ball tool on my paper sculpting mat, and then layer them up. Now you'll notice I've just got one of the large flowers, and then I've just die cut two of the smaller elements. I thought rather than have I didn't want this to be too similar to the other project, so instead of cutting 3 large flowers, I've done 1 large and then 2 smaller, and I'm going to pop them on the opposite corner. Now this is a stamp set by Alpaca Pals, and I thought this sentiment would go really nicely. I decided not to use the alphabet again because I didn't want this to be too similar to the other project, and I thought this would look nice. So I've stamped that, and I'm going to quickly die cut a couple of the leaf elements. I'm just using one of the leaves on this one, and I'm going to die cut it twice so that I can have them coming out each side of the flowers. And I'm using the same green that I used for the wreath. I didn't want to introduce another colour because this card is quite bright and vibrant. I didn't want too many colours going on. So I'm just going to stick all these elements down. This time I'm just using glue for all of it. And then I'm going to pop the leaves. I'll have one coming out the top, just following the curve a little bit. And then for the bottom one, I've just ripped a piece off because I didn't want it looking identical or too symmetrical. So I thought if I have a shorter piece here, and I'm going to have it coming out just there so it doesn't look too symmetrical. So that's my card. And as a final touch, I've got the Nuvo drops out again, and I've got, I think this one's called Buttermilk. I'm going to use this pale yellow just to do some centres in the flowers, and then I've grabbed one of the these are the translucent ones. So this is it looks orange, but it's very translucent, so it's just going to give a subtle look. And I'm just going to dot a few of these around the florals here, just following that sort of shape of the leaves and the florals, just to add a bit of interest. So I can pop that to one side, and once that's dry, I'm all done. So I hope you've enjoyed these 2 projects. I've found this really fun doing a collaboration with Anne. So if you haven't already, I hope you're going to pop over to her channel now and have a look at her 2 projects. Thanks again for watching. I'll put all the details in the description box of all the products I've used, just in case you're interested in getting hold of any of these lovely dies. And I will hopefully see you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.